The legalisation of cannabis in the recreational space in Canada has brought about much speculation that the UK is ready to move through the medicinal approval process, allowing recreational use of this currently restricted drug. Well, Samantha Myers, a corporate specialist, and John Cooper, a regulatory specialist, join us now from legal firm Gowling WLG. Good to talk to you both. First of all, Sam, to you. What are the opportunities that look like they could present themselves here in the corporate space in the UK, should politicians in the country choose to move through this process quickly?
Sure. I mean, we've seen a lot of activity since last November when the medicinal legislation eased up a bit. Most of the activity we're seeing at the moment is around London listings, so pharmaceutical companies, medicinal cannabis companies. There is activity in the CBD space as well, in the wellness arena, whether that is initial investment, startup investment, pre-IPO investment or through to listings. So it's been very, very busy since last November. I think it's fair to say there are a handful, if not 6, 7 IPOs in the pipeline for AIM and for the main market. They have been slightly delayed due to the amount of due diligence required by the regulators and indeed the banks and the lawyers involved to make sure these companies are doing what they should be doing within our UK regime. So it's a bit slower than we were hoping it would be, but I think before Christmas we might see some listings.
Well, let's pick up on that point about regulation and bring John Cooper in. John, what about the regulatory side of it? How easy as it is to get a structure up and running in this country? We have the experience, of course, of Canada. As I said at the top, it's gone through this process once. Is it just a question of adopting what they've done and rolling it out again, or is the UK going to be unique?
Well, in principle, we could follow what Canada's chosen to do. In practice, I'm not sure that the political momentum is there for that at the moment. And of course, one of the issues with Brexit is that as far as lawmaking is concerned, it's tending to suck all of the air out of the room and leave not a great deal of space for anything else. Whether in the absence of Brexit there might have been more movement towards liberalisation, it's hard to say, but at the moment there really hasn't been the bandwidth within government just to even discuss those issues. From a regulatory point of view, as things stand, and if that liberalisation doesn't happen, I think one of the unusual features for me is that while there's a lot of interest in this market and certainly a lot of money chasing corporate opportunities, actually not a great deal has changed in regulatory terms. There's been some minor liberalisation of medicinal cannabis, which hasn't had a huge impact in the UK so far, but everything else is largely as it was before.
Do you see much opposition building against the case of liberalising the market as it stands at the moment?
I think as there's been a spotlight shone on this area over the last year or so, particularly since Canada's liberalisation, people have begun to look in more detail at the underlying evidence around what cannabis does, particularly when it's included as an ingredient in other products, either medicinal or food. And we're beginning now to see reports come through from bodies such as Parliamentary Select Committees, National Institute of Health and Care Excellence, which are really questioning the underlying evidence base. So while there is a pull factor, if you like, which is the amount of money chasing the opportunity, there's also a bit of a push factor in the opposite direction, which I think is holding things back, which is that questioning of whether the evidence is really there to justify the liberalisation at this point in time.
Let's pick up on that point as well, if I can, about the sector. I mean, John was mentioning there, is it food or drugs? Is it going to be a pharmaceutical sector we're looking at here, or is it foodstuffs?
I think in the UK at the moment it's pharma and it's medicinal cannabis, which is the area everyone's really focusing on, and that has really been since last November. But I think what people tend to forget is that CBD was actually around a long time before last November, and actually it just seems to be in the limelight a lot more now because of what happened last November. CBD, depending on where you put it, whether it's an oil or in a cream or a tonic, it depends where you then align it to a sector. So it wouldn't necessarily be food or drink over here at the moment, although that is what people are trying to do. You're getting CBD oils or teas or what have you. That's much more a Canadian-led thing at the moment with the edibles legislation that's coming through. But we are certainly seeing it as an addition to creams and, for example, bath salts, things like that. So I would say that's more wellness, healthcare almost, and then very much medicinal. So I think probably 3 buckets: recreational, which we're not really touching over here, healthcare, wellness, which would be the CBD kind of arena, and then pharmaceutical and medicinal, which is the 3rd bucket.
Yeah. What about, you talked about the IPO pipeline, you think
Yes.
it's looking quite healthy potentially. What about the potential investment money
Yes.
Is there much standing in the wings in the markets at the moment, do you think, to come into this area?
Yeah, I think there is. People are obviously looking at Canada as a leading market on this, and there is a lot of investment money in Canada that's looking to invest across the rest of the world, Europe particularly, and the UK. So we are seeing investment interest into either UK businesses or businesses on the UK exchanges. I think the difficulty is our regulatory regime, so the Proceeds of Crime Act, and essentially what is legalised over here and what isn't at the moment is very different to Canada. So the level of risk an investor is prepared to take really has to be analysed in detail before they know whether they can invest into a CBD company or a medicinal company or a pharmaceutical company. And again, what risk profile that firm has. Do they want early investment or do they want a long-standing investment with an IPO type exit? So yes, there is a lot of money looking to land in Europe and the UK, and I think there was a lot of push from the investor side to get these kind of transactions going through as well.
John, as a partner at Gowling WLG, you do a lot of public speaking in this area, and I've seen you speak at events here in London. What is it you're hearing from people you're talking to about the sort of questions they're putting to you, about sort of aspects of the markets they're either concerned about or you think that could be of interest to people looking at this as a first opportunity?
People are concerned around uncertainty, to be honest. The one thing that investors...
From politicians? From the regulatory aspect?
Uncertainty as to the state of the law as it currently stands, what is legal, what isn't. Uncertainty as to regulators' appetites to enforce the law. There are certain things which might be strictly illegal but are being allowed to happen, where the regulators aren't being active. And then uncertainty in the longer term as to the wider political environment. Is there going to be a move towards liberalisation or not? Now, obviously, uncertainty is something that's very unattractive to investors, and they want to know some clarity around what the regulatory landscape is currently, and it's very hard to give that at this stage. So pricing in that risk of uncertainty is really key, I think, to investors who are thinking about being in this space.
We'll have to leave it there, but thanks indeed there for joining us. That's Samantha Myers, a corporate specialist, and John Cooper, a regulatory specialist, joining us there from legal firm Gowling WLG.